Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're journeying back in time to the coast of West Africa, to a place European traders once called the Gold Coast. We know it today as the vibrant nation of Ghana. But how did this region, a hub of powerful African kingdoms and trade, become a British colony? It's a complex story that begins not with conquest, but with a landmark moral decision made thousands of miles away in London. Let's dive into the pivotal century, from 1807 to 1900, to understand how the Gold Coast fell under British rule. The year is 1807. The British Parliament passes the Slave Trade Act. This monumental law didn't free anyone who was already enslaved, but it made it illegal for British ships to participate in the slave trade. This was a huge shift. For centuries, the British, along with other European powers, had built their wealth on the horrific trade of human beings from this very coast. Now, the Royal Navy was tasked with enforcing this ban. Their ships began patrolling the West African coast, intercepting slave ships and disrupting the trade that had defined the region's economy and its relationship with Europe for so long. But why did Britain do this? It wasn't just one reason. A powerful abolitionist movement, led by figures like William Wilberforce and Olaudah Equiano, had been gaining momentum for decades. They campaigned relentlessly, exposing the sheer brutality of the slave trade to the British public. There were also economic arguments. With the Industrial Revolution booming, some influential thinkers believed that Africa would be more valuable as a market for British goods and a source of raw materials, like palm oil and cotton, rather than a source of enslaved labor. Legitimate trade, they argued, was the future. This new policy created a power vacuum on the Gold Coast. The local kingdoms, especially the powerful Asante Empire in the interior and the Fante Confederation along the coast, had economies deeply intertwined with the slave trade. The British, once just one of several European groups clinging to coastal forts, now saw themselves as enforcers of a new world order. They began to sign anti-slavery treaties with local Fante chiefs, offering them protection and support in exchange for their cooperation. This put the British on a direct collision course with the Asante Empire. The Asante were a formidable military power. Their empire had expanded significantly, and they viewed the coastal Fante states as their vassals. The Asante leadership saw the British alliance with the Fante as a direct challenge to their authority and their economic interests. They weren't just going to stand by and watch the British dictate the terms of trade and politics in their own backyard. Tensions escalated, leading to a series of conflicts that would define the 19th century in the region. These weren't small skirmishes. They were full-blown wars, known as the Anglo-Asante Wars. The first major clash came in the 1820s. In 1824, an Asante army completely defeated a British-led force, and the British governor, Sir Charles McCarthy, was killed. His skull was reportedly taken back to the Asante capital, Kumasi, as a war trophy. This was a shocking defeat for the British and a clear demonstration of Asante military strength. It forced Britain to realize that controlling the Gold Coast would not be easy. For a while, the British government even considered abandoning their forts altogether, believing the cost in lives and money was just too high. But the merchants and missionaries on the coast had other ideas. They lobbied hard for a continued British presence. In 1828, a committee of London merchants took over the administration of the forts. They appointed a man named George Maclean as governor. Maclean was a pragmatist. Instead of seeking direct confrontation, he used diplomacy. He managed to negotiate a peace treaty with the Asante in 1831, which recognized the independence of the coastal states and opened up trade routes to the interior. For about a decade, an uneasy peace held, and legitimate trade in palm oil and gold dust began to flourish. Maclean's administration extended a sort of informal jurisdiction over the coastal areas, settling disputes and creating a fragile sense of stability. However, this informal arrangement couldn't last. In 1843, the British government took back direct control. The following year, they signed the Bond of 1844 with a number of Fante chiefs. This document is hugely significant. In it, the chiefs acknowledged the Queen of Great Britain's power and jurisdiction, agreeing to abolish certain barbaric customs and allowing serious crimes to be tried in British courts. From the Fante perspective, this was likely seen as a formalization of their military alliance with a powerful protector. But from the British perspective, it was the legal cornerstone of their future colony, the first real step from influence to direct rule. With this new legal footing, British influence crept further inland. They established a formal administration, a supreme court, and a police force. But the Asante Empire remained a powerful independent rival. The peace was shattered again in the 1860s and 70s. The Third Anglo-Asante War in 1873-74 was a turning point. This time, the British were determined to deliver a knockout blow. They sent a large, well-equipped expeditionary force under Sir Garnet Wolseley. After several fierce battles, the British forces marched into the Asante capital, Kumasi. They blew up the royal palace with dynamite and burned the city to the ground. This was a devastating humiliation for the Asante. The resulting Treaty of Femena forced them to renounce their claims over the coastal states, promise free trade, and pay a large indemnity in gold. The victory was celebrated back in Britain, and later that year the Southern Territories were formally declared the Gold Coast Colony. The British were no longer just traders or allies. They were now the official colonial rulers of the coast. The scramble for Africa was in full swing, and Britain was staking its claim. But the story wasn't over. The Asante Empire, though defeated, was not destroyed. They resisted British encroachment for 2 more decades. The final act came in the 1890s. The British, fearful of French and German colonial ambitions in the region, demanded that the Asante accept a British protectorate. When the Asante king, the Asante Haile Prempeh Thurs, refused, the British sent another army in 1896. This time, there was no battle. To avoid another destruction of Kumasi, Prempeh Wafri and his high-ranking chiefs surrendered. They were arrested and exiled to the Seychelles Islands. The final desperate resistance came in 1900, led by the incredible Queen Mother of Ejisu, Ya Asantewa. When the British governor demanded the surrender of the Golden Stool, the sacred symbol of the Asante nation's soul, she rallied the remaining Asante leaders in what became known as the War of the Golden Stool. For months, the Asante laid siege to the British fort in Kumasi, but ultimately, superior British firepower won the day. After this final war, the Asante kingdom was officially annexed into the Gold Coast colony. By the dawn of the 20th century, the process that began with the abolition of the slave trade had ended with the complete colonization of the region. A new chapter of resistance and the long road to independence would begin. Thank you so much for watching. This is a story with so many layers, and we've only just scratched the surface. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what you think or what other topics you'd like to see covered. See you in the next video.